And ladies and gentlemen, it's Irvin with UnSpun. Joe is supposed to be here with us. I talked to him a few hours ago, but I'm not sure where he is. He didn't answer the phone. Maybe he ran on an errand and he forgot. But anyway, we'll try to do the show solo style then. And it's the topic of tonight's episode is families and relationships in a brave new world. And essentially, it's going to be designed, or it is laid out to break down the attacks against family and the family model in favor of socialist and communist models, and how the agenda against the family has been being rolled out for about at least a century now, if not longer, and we can see remnants of these attacks on family in earlier times as well. So the idea essentially, and this is something from Aldous Huxley, and Aldous Huxley wrote in his articles, etc., about turning uh, slavery into something that we love, essentially, and into getting us to love our servitude. And I was just looking for the quote here, and he says, "Within the next generation, I believe that the world's rulers will discover that infant conditioning and narco-hypnosis are more efficient as instruments of government than clubs and prisons, and that the lust for power can be just as easily or just as completely satisfied by suggesting people into loving their servitude as by flogging and kicking them into obedience." And so this episode is really about understanding how slavery is sold as freedom and getting us to love our servitude, and looking at it through the eyes of family. Now, I'm a single father and my son is 9. I've been a victim of this attack on family, etc. And in hindsight, I can see it. So, what better than someone who's fallen a victim of these social policies, than someone who's gone through it themselves? So, to start out, we should probably talk about the idea of women's rights. Now, this is a hot topic, and unfortunately, a lot of people are going to see this as an attack on women's rights and women's freedom and stuff like that. This is not at all what it is. And this is to bring a level of understanding to all of this material. And so when we understand that within the United States, especially, there was no taxation without representation. What does this mean? Well, no taxation without representation. Well, first, before you could be taxed, before the women, for instance, could be taxed, they had to be given representation. So, in order to get representation, what does that mean? Well, that means that you vote. So now you vote, now you can be taxed. So the goal with that wasn't, as women were sold, it was, in fact, an attack on the family unit. And Edward Bernays was behind this campaign with women voters and torches of freedom with women smoking campaigns, etc. But getting women out of the family, getting them into the workplace. So once you get them a vote, then they can be taxed, and then they need to be in the workplace, for those taxes, etc. So the family, the idea again is to take attention away from the family, and there was an entire movement with the suffragettes, etc., with trying to make it appear that all men were out to suppress women, that women were entirely suppressed. And it's not to say that there wasn't some of that, but as well, there are things that aren't explained in the history of this. And I'll go into more of her work later. And she's been on the Gnostic Media podcast a number of times, and that's Karen Strauhan, or Karen A Girl Writes What, who is spent many, many hours on her YouTube channel, which is Girl Writes What, debunking the feminist agenda. And so, with the women votes comes taxation. The idea is to get them out of the family. The idea is to get them to believe, see, the idea was that men, and when culture is centered around family, men are larger and stronger, typically. So they typically provide and protect. Obviously, women are better at nurturing. They have breasts and they also have wombs. So women give life. So the men provide and protect, and the women give life. So there is a natural synergistic effect there that has obviously lasted since the dawn of time, that has kept things together. So the name of the game here is destruction of the family. And if we look at things focused on just one thing, we're not going to see it, but we have to see all of these little threads working together. The lack of critical thinking, the promotion of the Grateful Dead and rock music, and the creation of false subgenres of music to separate high school children, etc., into easily divided and conquered subgroups, rockers and punkers and heavy metalers and reggae people and ravers and this group and that group, etc. These are all false social divisions. Dividing men and women was the same thing. So, with the likes of Miss Magazine, we had magazines that were out to intentionally promote false information for Gloria Steinem, who I've exposed several times already on this show, was a CIA agent. And to just quote this brief quote here from DCI William Colby, the former head of the Central Intelligence Agency, he says, "I might quote Miss Gloria Steinem, one of those so assisted who commented that the CIA wanted to do what we wanted to do, present a healthy, diverse view of the United States. I never felt I was being dictated to at all." And so the healthy, diverse view of the United States that they were promoting was anything that attacked the breakup of the family. It was anything that promoted the long-term agenda of eugenics and attack on the family. So transvestitism, homosexuality, high divorce rates, creating high crime in the inner cities with the black families, etc. So this is all the so-called diverse view that the Central Entertainment or Central Intelligence Agency wanted to promote. And so without family, government becomes the parent. Essentially, it becomes the supreme deity in the form of socialism and communism. And this issue of extended adolescence comes along, where instead of starting families in our mid to late 20s, now it's in our 30s or early 40s, if at all. And so there's this long delay. There's a lot less time building for ourselves, building something that stands the test of time. And why is that important for these elites? And this, and I know this probably sounds like some, Christian radio talk show agenda or something right now, but this is entirely not. This is just from research, looking at the facts of all of this. And yes, while the Christians were screaming this from their rooftops for decades, if not centuries, when we step back and we look at all of this information, we have to give them credit because they were correct for the most part. So, this isn't to promote Christianity as a religion. It's to make people aware that these things actually are going on. And this extended adolescence does lead to socialist, communist agendas, does lead to a government, constantly being there for the child who essentially never grows up. Now, when someone becomes a parent, and being a parent, I can attest to this, is that the parent relives his or her life through the child. Each stage the child goes through, the parent relives that stage and sees it on a whole new level. and essentially gaining new perspectives and deepening understanding with each age, etc., with each event, all of this stuff. It sort of reawakens everything. So a person without children, and I'm not trying to attack anyone, but is essentially living in a state of extended adolescence and wanting, essentially wanting someone else to take care of them. Whereas a parent understands this protect, provide, nurture, give life factor. And, especially a good parent wants everything that they can to provide and protect and nurture their children to give them the best possible life. So without this, what happens is we become focused on ourselves. Many may remember the BBC documentary film several years ago, The Century of the Self. And they were looking at the debate between Freud and Edward Bernays, et cetera, and all of this. Well, this is exactly what we're talking about. What they wanted to do is turn everyone away from focus of the family and onto focus of the self, onto long-term selfish goals, because, well, that's in the government's long-term best interest. If a government wants to survive, they don't want family, and especially extended family with the aunts, uncles, cousins, everybody living together. Mom and dad, say a couple of them can go off to work and do something over here. Well, there's still grandmother, aunts, uncles, cousins, etc., who can watch after the other children and the siblings, etc. So this creates an entirely different scenario, whereas a single mother, for instance, might be reliant upon welfare checks. And in the original push for the destruction of the Black family, and Joe and I talked about this last week, they actually promoted in these magazines that Black men were suppressing Black women, and then they actually gave Black women more government funds, more welfare, if they left their husbands. So what happened was, in the 60s and 70s, this led to a massive explosion of violence in the inner cities with fatherless children, etc. Parents, father and mother, regardless of all of the transgender rhetoric out there, are generally still the best parents. Now, of course, there can be some bad natural parents, and there can be some bad transgender and gay parents as well, or some good ones, excuse me. We don't want to use a hasty, sweeping generalization fallacy on these. But the idea here is that when we understand this attack on the family, it creates a reliance upon the state. And we're seeing this in England right now. And right now, the socialism is so rampant in England that the men are withdrawing from society. And so even the social structure is collapsing because the men are no longer there to work to uphold this entire structure that the women are feeding off of through the state. So in order for this socialist state structure to exist and maintain itself, the men still need to be there, even if they're single, to prop up this socialist system, which is then stolen from the other side and given to the single mothers, etc. So this whole idea essentially is what is feeding this monster that we see out there today. And it is largely Aldous Huxley's creation, as he foretold in A Brave New World. And that was really Huxley's plan book, his guidebook for this dystopian history. And it looks like Joe's here. So, Joe, welcome to the discussion.
Well, thank you.
Sorry, I can barely. You did. Okay, get closer to your mic there so I can hear you.
I'm sorry. Right. We had a power failure.
All right.
We're back up now. So yeah, I was just going to comment that you're absolutely right. The Brave New World, even though it on a surface narration may seem like it's an opposition to these things, is actually just a legacy piece. A vanity piece which describes the world they're going to create.
Right now, how long were you sitting there?
So that is Brave New.
How long were you sitting there before I noticed you were?
I was only here for about 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. So, well, I had covered that. The show topic. Families and Relationships in a Brave New World. I had sent you the outline in the email. I'm not sure if you got that. We touched on Slavery is Freedom, No Taxation Without
Got it.
Representation, getting women to vote, and then the whole Torches of Freedom, Edward Bernays. The name of the game is The Destruction of the Family. And of course, without family, government becomes the parent, the supreme deity, or socialism, communism, etc. So that's kind of what I covered up to now, if you want to jump in from there.
Oh, excellent. And this is a great outline. And obviously, it's something that every citizen needs to be aware of. I would point out that the article we wrote, Manufacturing the Deadhead, lists Edward Bernays' accomplishments, the programs that he was working on early in the 20th century between, say, 1910, 1925. And basically, it is a list of those elements that appeared in the counterculture. And one of them, of course, is feminism, which he was one of the founders of. Then,
well, sure, yeah, I have that in the list there. We hadn't gotten down there yet.
But another thing was pornography, because
Sure.
Bernays actually, as he said, he basically,
Sure. Well, you check out the outline, because I've got everything outlined. You're kind of jumping ahead on.
All right. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I was adding it on to that. Well, why don't you go forward through the outline, and I'll catch up as you go through it.
All right. So, anyway, what I should add to this discussion is also, it appears very likely that the population numbers that are touted are very likely manufactured as a scare tactic. I know that I personally haven't gone around to verify population stats of every city, county, state, and nation, et cetera. Have you, Joe?
No, but I would concur that the information that comes from the government should be suspected. It should be seen as propaganda. It should be suspected as such. You have to go through the documentation to demonstrate it, but you certainly can't believe anything that is given to you by the federal government at its face, because there are just too many examples, too many primary documents, a lot of which we show in the various research papers, that show malfeasance. You look at Gordon Wasson's pay requisition for the beginning of the counterculture and the drug revolution, and there it is. It's right in front of you. So you can't believe anything that is given to you by the government, period.
Well, and what I want to jump into here for a moment is going to be a touchy subject for a lot of people. And it's something that I've noticed for a while, and I've never really brought it up on the show, but I think it's important to do so. And it's women and their pets as surrogate children. And what we see out there today is women in their late 20s to early 40s that don't have children will actually substitute animals, especially dogs, often cats, but typically dogs, as surrogate children. And they will go so far as to dress their dogs, and they'll have all manner of outfits, etc., with them. They travel with the pet. The pet will even sleep in the bed. And of course, dogs are pack animals. And if you allow a dog to sleep in your bed, you're telling it that it's the alpha, and that's the biggest no-no that you can do. So then the animal actually becomes the dominant animal in the relationship. But I've even seen women go so far as to push their dogs around in strollers.
Yeah, I mean, this is a symptom of a familyless society, that the natural maternal instincts and feelings, which are obviously so important in any culture, have nowhere to go, because
Right.
there are so many women who are not basically producing children. I mean, I even think, going back to your comment that you can't trust the population number, I really would love to see some statistical sampling of our fertility numbers in the United States, because I think they're far worse than are actually being let on. I know one woman I talked to who went to UC Davis upon graduation. She said that there were no marriages that she was aware of out of the entire graduating class. probably 5,000 people. And she said she wasn't even aware of anyone that was close to that kind of a decision. So anyway, when such a powerful drive and an important part of culture has nowhere to go, yeah, you can expect, pets to be dressed, and this being a way to, to use the Freudian term, sublimate that a drive that has nowhere to move to.
Yeah, sorry, folks. There I had a bunch of teenagers walking out in front of the place, screaming and shouting and causing all sorts of ruckus out there. Yeah, and Joe.
At least you've got electricity, brother.
Well, I've got electricity, and a perfect example of this broken society is these, children.
Exactly.
It's so sad too. It's like when I see the high school kids getting dropped off from school, they'll walk down the middle of the streets and everything. I mean, it's just, acting is, dressed as dumb as they can look and acting as dumb as they can.
Yeah.
And, it's like you got to honk at them every single day to even get down the roadway, because they're blocking the whole damn street when they walk. I mean, it's just, there's just no level of respect, no level of common sense, no level of common courtesy towards others. It's just, they're broken.
Well, they're victims. I mean,
Yeah,
they have
absolutely.
been taken into a degraded place by all of the propaganda cues and by the poisonous diet and vaccinations. The whole
Well, that's for sure. Well, and Joe, every time I see them, they're usually carrying a bag of Doritos and a can of soda pop or Monster drink or something like that, right?
Yeah, and so they're all suffering from very poor nutrition, and I mean, just they have inflammation, they can't think clearly. Then the other attack, of course, is on their mind. They have pornographic images given to them every single day. And then, of course, they're not shown how to think clearly. So none of this is circumstance. All of this can be traced directly back to it wasn't necessarily the beginning, but all of it can be seen to stem from Edward Bernays. You can look at all of these elements and see Bernays was involved in producing them. You can see this is a long-standing program, hundreds of years in creation. And I would recommend anyone who wants to see just how long-standing the program is to simply look at the analysis I do of The Tempest, which is on the postflaviana.org website. It's not hidden behind a paywall. It's available for everyone to just go and attend. Look at that analysis, and you'll see that the idea of putting a people into a dream to basically to debase them and to rule them is just this very, very old idea. And so when Huxley uses the expression Brave New World, he is basically showing he understands this occulted meaning of Shakespeare. So this is really important.
Well, and talk about that. That goes back to Isaiah, correct?
Right. I mean, Shakespeare used Isaiah 29 through 35 as the basis for The Tempest. The character Ariel, the event, The Tempest, but more importantly, the dream that the people are placed into. These are all manifestations of ideas that are found in Isaiah 29 through 35. Scholars have recognized that Isaiah was one of the bases for The Tempest, but no one has really seen that the entire play is based upon Isaiah. And so what you're going to see is an apocalypse, a genocide that comes out of this putting people into a dream. And so when Huxley uses the expression and uses it in a way that shows he has an understanding of Shakespeare's meaning, it's very grim stuff, because this really does look like you're looking at a kind of planned debasement and enslavement, followed by an extermination of a whole population. So I would just hope everyone go to the website postflaviana.org, look at the analysis, and then with that information, go forward to Jan's site and look at how he has arranged Huxley within his brilliant piece of software, the brain. So you can see how Huxley then spins out like the center of a spider web into all the modern world. And when you look at these
Absolutely.
elements, and when you look at these
Well,
elements,
it's like the old adage, Joe, all roads lead to Rome. In the case of social control and manipulation, all roads lead to Huxley.
yeah, I mean, he was absolutely at the center of it. And so when he uses the expression "Brave New World" in this manner, it's very, very troubling. And I'll just point out that the Freemason Rudyard Kipling also used the expression "Brave New World" in his poem "Gods of the Copybook Heading," and he uses it in exactly the same way. He said, when people are paid for existing, in other words, when the welfare state is there because the people have all been put into a dream, and the brave new world begins. So look at how he's using the expression. He says, when people are paid for existing. I mean, Jan, he's writing this thing at the beginning of or the end of the 19th century. How does he know about a welfare state, right?
Right.
When people are paid for, actually he's writing in 1950, and there's talk of it, but he's looking at the future. He is saying when people are paid for existing and the brave new world begins, and then he talks about an apocalypse. He says, then the gods of the copybook heading return with vengeance and slaughter. And so this idea is the same idea that is hidden inside the Tempest, but Kipling understands. And it is the same idea that is inside Brave New World, Huxley's book, which Huxley understands. So it is a trajectory of a program, of a plan. And I would hope every single person who looks at my analysis goes immediately to Jan's website and then look at how Huxley then spiders, it's like a web that moves out into the modern world.
Well, and while you're explaining that, I'm going to show that on screen so that people
Would
can
you? Yeah,
see.
that would be fantastic, because I would think that anyone who really wants to understand where we are today should start right here. This would be a fantastic point to look at. Now, look at the connections that Jan has established with Huxley. And again, and of course, look at this picture that Jan is showing of Huxley with the one eye. Now, this is, of course, the Freemason photographic posture. They're basically showing that they are followers of the cult of the one eye of God, the all-seeing eye. So this is Huxley. He is a Freemason monster. I would also recommend, if you haven't done so, look at the analysis I do of J.D. Salinger's Catcher in the Rye, and you can see then look at what Jan has done with Huxley. And you'll understand what the one eye is, and you can see that there is this hidden goal of genocide that is inside these secret societies, inside these all-seeing eye communities, that has infested all of our governments and is basically what is causing the kind of cultural disaster that Jan is referring to. So
and we can also then understand why Huxley was such a key architect of the CIA's MK Ultra program, etc.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Right.
Yeah, so it all becomes very clear. Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into polyamory for a moment here, and I think this is another important topic: polyamory and free love. More focus on the outside rather than building something real for you and your children for the future. And so again, it's this idea of, with this broken society that we've created and with all of these outside distractions, the average relationship can only last a few years. And so you should just get over having anything, have lots of lovers, an endless string of serial loves, etc. And then, by the time you're in your, late 30s, early 40s or whatever, and begin to figure it out, it's really already too late to start a family, especially for women who might be entering menopause at that time.
Right. I mean, so they took sexuality, and this can be traced directly back to Edward Bernays and the play Damaged Goods, and which incidentally was attended and supported by the Roosevelts and the Rockefellers. So
why don't you tip your camera down a little more?
Sorry.
There you go.
And so anyway, you can see that culture moves very slowly, and to debase the culture in the way that they had to go through various phases. The first steps seem almost benign. but as they go further, they kind of loosen up the what is possible to display. And so
Sure,
then
it's like the concept of tiptoe totalitarianism.
yeah, I mean, well, basically what you're getting is people who are uh, they're exposed to sexuality in the 60s as something that is free, as part of the freedom movement. Um, and it is also characterized as recreation. This comes at this.
Well, and then you're told that it's freedom, and that your old the traditional style that's kept humanity going since the beginning of time is actually slavery, but this new form that ends in communism and socialism is actually freedom.
Exactly. And so what they did was they switched sex to recreation. That's how they were trying to sell it. They made the rock idols all have a very debased sex life. I mean,
Right.
and you can see the rock idols, of course, many of them were getting their cues from Aleister Crowley. Are
Right. As was Aldous Huxley, for that matter. They were pals.
exactly. And so you're getting a program,
Sure.
that's being,
And for those who don't know, I should also mention people can read Secret Agent 666. The Aleister Crowley was working for the for MI6, for British intelligence, and so just like Aldous Huxley, just like Leary, the rest of them.
Ian Fleming and James Bond.
Well, sure, you're right, exactly. But this is the intelligence community, and these guys worshipped Emanuel Swedenborg before Crowley, etc., and all for these same things, essentially. But and going back to what you were saying a moment ago about all of these encoded stories and Huxley understanding Shakespeare, etc., what people need to understand is that this is actually part of the cryptography that the intelligence community uses to hide their information from the general public.
Right. They can discuss the program. They can create legacy for themselves because they love that. And they can do so in a way where the public doesn't understand what they're saying.
Absolutely. Yeah. They love to toot their own horns, you know.
So they can put out Brave New World. And in fact, it's actually a way of mocking us and laughing at us.
Yes.
It's in other words, they're saying you're so stupid, you can't understand what the symbolism that
right.
the literature represents.
I'm always amused though, because if the public is so stupid, then why do they spend so many trillions of dollars to continually dumb them down and to push dumbing down agendas? If people were naturally that stupid, they wouldn't need this tiptoe agenda. They wouldn't need all of these things, all of this destruction of the family and everything else. It would have happened centuries ago already, and
well, I mean,
so it goes to show that they're wrong on every level. But another thing that goes to show that they're wrong is all of the secrecy that they have to use for these agendas. And so to show that they are stupid and incompetent, one only needs to shine the light on them and watch them scatter like cockroaches, and then you stomp on them and then they run and they scatter and you do it all over again.
Right. I mean, the problem, of course, is that they have infested the political structure. You look at the universities and these adolescent university students today that need their safe zones. Everything is offensive, and now they're trying to, white history is offensive. Never mind, the Aztecs would murder people, but you can't even get them to study the Florentine Codex and stuff like this anymore. They read one history book from one secondary source, and they think they've studied the whole thing, and that's it. And this or that group, and it's again more divide and conquer, more separation instead of people working together to figure out who's really doing what. Right. Exactly. I mean, the European is given a false history, a false understanding of self, both men and women.
Sure. And any suppression of Europeans throughout history has also been whitewashed. Any history of the Welsh, of the Gaelics, of the Germanic peoples getting suppressed by Rome or anything else, or enslaved, etc. Every culture at one time has been conquered, has been enslaved, and every culture at one time has conquered and has enslaved across the board.
The program today is primarily determined to make sure that people don't organize and start doing analysis about the secret society that runs the government. I mean, so all things distract. You know, you have things like football, pornography,
Absolutely.
music. I mean, the movies. I mean, these things are arresting and very, very attention grabbing.
Well, and that's, and there's even show and music band Arrested Development,
right, yeah. The
They put it
expression,
right in your face.
yeah, I mean, the expression "Brave New World." People think that brave meaning is used there as courageous, but actually, there's an occulted meaning in Shakespearean times. Brave could mean fashionably bold or fashionably eccentric, essentially, to catch the attention of someone, to distract.
And we do know that Huxley was quite eccentric on his own right.
He certainly was.
Yeah, besides, his fake marriages, he was lovers with D.H. Lawrence, etc. So, he really hated normal society.
Yeah, he did, certainly, and he was part of this group. His family had been involved with it, God knows for how long, maybe for thousands of years, but they, gained control of the political structure of England and Scotland, and then they went out throughout the world, causing trouble. I mean, you have, the wars, as you pointed out, Jan, and I've talked about this quite a bit, are basically just population reducing.
Yeah, they're just eugenics programs.
I mean, you look at,
you get the wives to make the guns, and you put the husbands in the ditches with the guns, and they kill each other. That's essentially how it goes.
You look at the Napoleonic War and the slaughter at Waterloo. I mean, Waterloo, you had Napoleon and his Freemasons organizing the French army against, I think it was Wellington, and the Freemasons in Britain. I mean, this whole event was just a population grindstone, and this was repeated in the American Civil War.
Absolutely.
There's a photograph of Grant and Sherman, the generals, looking for an obelisk, like the Washington Monument in Egypt after the war, so they could bring it back and commemorate, the victories of killing all these people. Once they got the automatic weapon set up, this group was able to basically reduce population, almost in ways that could hardly even be imagined before this. So, the world, and you think about today, you have the Russian jet being shot down. You have all of this incredible military technology on both sides, so close together, planes flying all over. I mean, how close to World War III are we? When you see a Russian jet being shot down by a NATO nation, and the public that should be outraged that the United States has a tangling alliance with someone that would shoot down a Russian jet, right? Instead, they're completely numb.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and they're, and the story is always spun the opposite direction than it really is. And of course, that's why this show is UnSpun.
Right. Yeah.
But, we should, let's get back to.
Right. And I had a question for you, Jan. I mean, we were talking about the cultural issues, and how difficult family production is. Fortunately, I've been married for over.
Well, see, you're the young, good-looking married one in a nice home and nice family and everything, and I'm the single, unattractive. So obviously it's
that's a fantasy. But what I'm wondering about is, what is it like? And I don't, you don't need to use personal anecdotes if you don't want to, but I'm just curious, what do you experience as a person when you go into our culture and you try to establish relationships? What is that experience?
Wow. Well, that's a really good question, Joe, because, and I'm 44, I'm single, and, I got out of a relationship a year ago. I dated somebody earlier this year for a little while. It was long distance. It didn't work out. But when I look out there at the whole of society and just trying to find someone who's a viable candidate for building a strong future with, it's a train wreck. It's a Huxleyan wasteland out there. And of course, right now the CIA is listening. They're cheering. The psychopaths are cheering out there. But it's all of the destruction and dumbing down that they've caused influences everybody. I mean, when I go outside and I deal with so much incompetence on a daily basis. Every time I deal with some idiot somewhere, it's like, thanks, CIA. So you guys are impacting yourselves too with all of your idiocy. But yeah, it is a really frustrating wasteland. And you see women that would be great candidates in their mid-30s. I've known this one woman for years. She would make a great candidate, but she's so caught up into this Huxleyan world. And so many women think, oh well, men are suppressive, marriage is suppressive. I think freedom, lots of lovers, and marriage is bad, families are bad. But where are they going to be? And when they hit their late 60s, early 70s without family and support structure, their parents aren't going to be there anymore to take care of them. The only thing that's left is going to be the state.
Right.
And so, but I see it everywhere. I see extended adolescence with, lesbian gay agendas, with women and dressing dogs up as children and pushing them around in strollers. I mean, trying to find someone who's aware and awake out there in today's world is next to impossible. So
really, in other words, you're saying that the population has been so deranged that there really are very few candidates that you meet that want to establish.
Right. Yeah. That I would consider someone with quality ethics and standards like you and I talk about, maintaining consistency with reality, with the trivium method, etc. They're almost not to be found, and any of them that are out there are almost assuredly taken.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I imagine they would be pretty much.
It's like all the good ones are taken, definitely adds up, and then it's like, well, I guess when you can look at that at yourself too. Well, maybe I guess I wasn't one of the good ones. Whatever.
Well,
but
that's an interesting question. So it comes down to how there has to be lots of women, and for women there has to be lots of men that are able to establish relationships in their 40s and 30s.
Well, sure, but I mean, see, I wouldn't mind having more children, etc. I'm a father, but I love children, and so I, it's like, and find a woman who thinks, oh well, you want to have well, you're trying to suppress me. Well, in my opinion, the gift of life that women and men bring together is, and the women giving birth is the most feminine thing that a woman can possibly offer. And they think that it's slavery, but there's this whole extended adolescence thing. Well, my whole life is going to end if I have children. And that's quite the opposite. That's when your life begins.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the pieces of analysis that I think women especially should be aware of. And I'm going to write this up in an article and post it at Post Flaviana, and also give it to you for Gnostic Media. But Gloria Steinem with Ms. Magazine.
And I mentioned that at the beginning. So give the detail on that. Go ahead.
So what happened was, Gloria Steinem was CIA agent.
And I did read the quote earlier.
Completely vetted. And Ms. Magazine was, like Life Magazine, a cultural weapon.
Right.
She came out with an article which was I believe it was called Black Macho. I mean, unfortunately, I don't have the right in front of me. It's in Wikipedia, I believe, in Steinem's Wikipedia article. But the fact is that it was written by a woman named Michelle Wallace, who was Black, and this was later disputed. There's been a lot of controversy about who actually wrote it, and the woman sort of disappeared for several years, wouldn't do any interviews. There's all this mystery about who wrote the article, but you can look at from hindsight in the trajectory of how from the Civil War up until the Great Society program with Lyndon Johnson, the statistics of African Americans were moving closer and closer to parity in all of the cultural aspects to European Americans. Every
Right.
single
Right.
cultural statistical aspect was moving, every year was moving closer, closer. But from the Great Society onward, they fell off a cliff. And
Absolutely. So what they had was like over 90% marriage success rate to over 90% failure rate, and then we have all of this inner city crime and the total wipeout of
right.
Black
And so
culture.
when you look at Ms. Magazine attacking Black males, saying that they were violent and terrible people and you had to get rid of them, it created a protection and a rationale for the Great Society financial structure whereby single women were given more money who are poor than married women. In other words, this was sold as we're helping people who are trapped in these violent marriages escape by having single women get this financial benefit. But that, of course, led to complete destruction of the Black family, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, now you have just, I mean, it is just a catastrophe.
But hey, you know, but that's a diverse view that Steinem and the CIA wanted to peddle, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, you know, so you can look at, you know, when you look at the inner city train wreck and the kids and the violence and everything, you can thank Gloria Steinem. She's still alive. Send her a thank you letter and thank the CIA for that. Exactly. I mean, this is what these clowns do in their free time. Right. So let me read something here, Joe, because you know we've only got about 12 minutes left here, and I've got some other points there. But Theodore Adorno talks about liberation through sex, and of course, this is flipping up everything upside down. It's not liberation through sex; they're attacking society. We have to think about it. You know, if you think of the psychopath, you know, and these people who do this social engineering, they look at something like the Bible as what built up society. So they use the Kabbalah to flip it upside down and then attack and break society. So they're creating the literal fall of man. That's what essentially we can say this is in a nutshell. And we see this in Huxley and Leary's writings and other places as well. But Adorno's key concepts on education, and this is just a nutshell here, the foundation of Adorno's thought can be found in his early studies on the quote unquote authoritarian personality. And what he tried to do was show that, and this is from Bill Jocelyn, by the way, what he tried to do was argue that that families created authoritarianism. So therefore the elites needed to use authoritarian tyrannistic policies to break the family, if you can believe the nut job logic on that kind of stuff. But with his research team at the University of California, Berkeley, he searched for explanations for authoritarian behavior, predominantly during the National Socialist regime in Germany, but also within other totalitarian regimes. In his studies, he identified typical character attributes in persons that were growing up with authoritarian education, conventionalism, authoritarian submission, authoritarian aggression, anti-intraception, superstition, and stereotypy, power and stereotypes and power and toughness, destructiveness and cynicism, projectivity, and exaggerated concerns over sex. Based on the studies on the authoritarian personality, he was looking for explanations for the existence of totalitarian systems and for the possibilities for prevention of authoritarianism. Now, never mind that these are a bunch of psychopaths who don't, you know, who are using all of this stuff and who create all of these. I mean, if you want to study authoritarianism, you just, you know, you study the elites and the psychopaths and people who use all of this cryptography for their hidden agendas, etc. You don't attack the family and the middle class. They're not the source of the authoritarianism. They will pretty much get along and go along for centuries unharmed and unbothered if you leave them alone. But, you know, that doesn't work in the favor of the governments and the oligarchs, etc., and those with their socialist agendas. But, you know, going back to this feminism thing, Steinem promotes all of this free love and free sex. Now her thing is out there promoting, you know, people to, you know, good job having an abortion and all of this stuff. Good job killing your family, because this is going to keep people in this system. So Gloria Steinem flips that using this Kabbalah nonsense and wants people to think, oh, yes, I had an abortion. That's a source of strength that's actually leading to their own destruction. It is a form of eugenics. Now, another issue, and people don't ever like to talk about Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan is who really brought in the no-fault divorce. And so with that, then people could get divorced on a whim. And, if somebody cheated or did all kinds of stuff and, whatever, it was no fault. And so, then anybody could get divorced for anything at any time. And then another big one is career chasing. What they did was typically men were out there providing and working to bring good homes to provide things for the women with the wombs who then could nurture. But if you could get women out of the home, then you could get them, you could tax them. And I talked about the whole voting thing and taxation at the beginning of this. But once you get them chasing the career, then they're focused on that career, and they're going to be usually until their late 30s or early 40s before they figure out that they want a family. And then it's too late. And it's just, it's eugenics, stupid.
Right.
And so
I just wanted to interject that Adorno was, of course, simply one of a collection of cultural Marxists. And he took his cues from Gregor Lukács, Hungarian maniac. And Adorno kind of toned it down. He had the same goals, but he didn't have the power that Lukács did, because Lukács actually was the deputy commissar for culture in the Bolshevik regime in Hungary in the 1920s. So he had a lot of political power. And you could see that you can see Adorno's real program through his associate Lukács, because Lukács was free to just carry it out. Lukács had the sex education program in school for young children, which graphically instructed preteens and teenagers in free love, promiscuity.
Well, and that's actually the whole idea of sex education in schools as well, to get, children when they're in 4th and 5th grade thinking about sex, when before then they'd never had that thought before. Right. So the whole idea is the, early, instead of the family deciding when the stuff should be discussed, you have, the schools promoting it at young ages when they're not ready for that information.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say, I know there's a lot of ground to cover, we have only a few minutes, but I just want to say that, Bernays, Lukács, Adorno, it's one group of people with one program. And it's pretty easy when you back up and look at all of this through the progress of history to see that that they're not just all accidentally deciding, oh my God, let's promote free love and pornography for preteens. This is a program. This is something that's being done to culture for a purpose.
And another thing that, there's this whole issue out there today of stay-at-home dads where metrosexuals. And this actually around the 7-year mark ends up in a much higher rate of divorce. Women might think that, initially that they like this idea of them being at work and, how open-minded they are. But eventually, once family and children come into play, especially younger children, you have these stay-at-home dads. The women do lose patience, and at about the 7-year mark, they leave and they go look for a more traditional male that's going to provide and protect. And
right.
So,
absolutely. I just want to mention in the outline that you provided, you mentioned Girl Writes What? Karen Straham's
right, and everybody really needs to study her work extensively.
She does an excellent job of exposing the application of cultural Marxism feminism, and so she's a really good person.
And I have had her on the Gnostic Media show 3 times, so you can also go to the Gnostic Media website and see my interviews with her. One of them was called Socialism and Eugenics, Feminism, Socialism and Eugenics in Sheep's Clothing. Right. So, when we look around us, we can see this collapse of society, and we can see men living with mom and dad until late in life, playing video games, hanging out in their underwear, women who rely on the state, the intentional promotion of welfare in the Black community to break up the family and for women to leave the father. We have Miss Magazine and Steinem and these people promoting this false agenda and this eugenics. And rather than allowing families to naturally control population as they have done throughout time, as well as tribes, what the CIA's solution for overpopulation was to promote rampant sex, which of course caused a population explosion.
Right.
And,
yeah, they were following the program of science that had been developed, over the
sure.
centuries and focused in World War II of how to create a population that could be enslaved.
And another thing that I want to mention, Joe, is that men and women are different, and there's been a whole lot of gender bending and gender blending nonsense going on lately, and that is to hide the fact that men and women are different, that men are traditionally protectors, providers, and women nurturers because they have the womb and bringers of life, and that this system, there has been a system that's gone on between men and women that lasts this way. But the idea, getting the men out or excuse me, getting people to believe that men and women are essentially the same, that there aren't gender differences, is again part of this whole nonsense. And it's a good thing that men and women are different. But the feminists want to promote men as the evil. But you know what? Even lesbian couples have far greater level. All right, so apparently we lost signal for about a minute or two there. But anyway, we were just wrapping up about romance and emotionalism becoming the foundation of relationships due to the Magna Carta, etc. And relationships are not based on sound, real foundational goals or pragmatic intuition for long-term family agendas, such as organized, planned marriages by our parents, etc. Now it's all based on emotion. For better or worse, we're taught that it's a good thing. It may not be. My website, and ladies and gentlemen, please support the show and donate. We cannot continue to do this show without your support.
Right.
GnosticMedia.com.
Very important, because the media is corrupt. It's a weapon against us.
And folks, you need to support, those of us out there who are providing real information.
Right. And so this network is going to be the alternative. This is the beginning of a real people's network. And so I just want to thank everyone associated with this program for helping to produce it on. And I hope that everyone who listens to it supports it. Give donations to it to the extent you can, because believe me, nothing is more important, and nothing will free you more and protect you more than this kind of network becoming powerful.
And my website, GnosticMedia.com, GNOSTIC media.com. And Joe, yours?
CaesarsMessiah.com and postflaviana.org. And you can just reach me. My Gmail address is joeatwill@gmail.com. I'm happy to take any question.
And thanks, ladies and gentlemen. Again, please support the show. We can't continue without your support.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
The pursuit of a free, fair, just, sustainable world should be the focus of every person on our planet. The reason it is not is because people are kept distracted by the illusions and deceit propagated by the corporately controlled mainstream media. In recent years, the rise in truly informed, savvy researchers and journalists who have all taken to the air in various capacities has given rise to a new genre of media. We have seen the explosion of truly free and independent media, and thus the need to create an ethical live broadcast network that facilitated these brave and tireless souls became apparent. With a great amount of research and meticulous planning, Conscious Consumer Network was created. CCN is a first-of-its-kind broadcast network that is specifically dedicated to free and independent media with absolutely no government control, corporate sponsorship, or advertising. The live broadcast network runs full-time with an average of 25 shows and live broadcasts a week. The high-definition live stream is free to view and is accessible from any computer terminal with online access, including laptops, tablets, smartphones, and smart TVs. All shows are archived onto YouTube and are freely available to view in order to educate and inform as many as we can without imposing monetary limitations. CCN was successfully launched on the 1st of January 2015 and has gone from strength to strength as we have improved and increased the capacities and functionalities of the network, as well as an ever-rotating and improving lineup of content which is broadcast daily. CCN is blessed to be the home of some of the hardest-hitting, most cutting-edge, truly educational and informative materials. Catch interviews, reviews, and talk shows from the many different and beautiful perspectives from CCN's family of interviewers and broadcasters. Since the 1st of January 2015, we have produced over 800 shows. We have over 2 million YouTube minutes watched every month, and we have an average of 1 million hits a day on CCN's website. CCN is viewed in over 147 different countries and hosts broadcasters from 5 different continents. The time has now come to generate funding to keep CCN on the air for the duration of 2016. The total sum needed to continue broadcasting for 2016 is $60,000. This budget includes the replacement of computer equipment, the acquisition of secure servers, which are most needed as we keep getting hacked, plus the renewal of the broadcast license fee for 2016. This is a fraction of the annual budget used by mainstream media networks producing a similar quantity of content. This is what makes CCN so successful, unique, and accessible, is the ability to run a project of this size and reach on such minimal resources. CCN does not claim ownership over any of the material we produce and broadcast, as we firmly believe that information is the common heritage of all beings, and thus CCN belongs to you, the public, and it is up to you all to keep CCN going. CCN would like to thank those who have contributed to the network in the past with resources, content, information, time, and energy. We thank you for supporting free and independent media.